Mm. Hello, 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 beautiful, powerful, everyday women of the world. Yes, you gorgeous, gorgeous, loyal listener. I love you. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Startup Stories podcast, where new female business owners and the everyday women come to get nourished, come to feed their mind and spirit in a space where you are heard, held, and served. I bring you relatable stories to keep you sane, grounded, and growing as you deliver your purpose, grow your business, expand your spirit, take over the world, live your best life ever. Oh, I'm all fired up this morning. Shocking, not shocking. I have barely even had a few sips of coffee, but I'm awake, I'm alive, I'm ready, and I'm here to serve. And I have Dominiece Clifton with me, you guys. And from the moment that she landed in my inbox, my heart started like pulsing at a different frequency. She is a relatable version of myself. She has a beautiful heart of service. She has a very clear vision, a very strong faith. And she's just an everyday woman serving through her purpose in order to honor the Lord and in order to honor herself and the reason that she's here. She's not perfect. She's not got it all figured out. She's ever growing. She's constantly committed to further evolution, to further expansion and exploration of what's possible. She's created an incredibly beautiful body of work with a few signature pieces that resonate so hard with the mission in my heart around unifying mind, body, spirit, and then applying into business. She brings this intersection of connection, community, and change. She also uses alliteration, which is a girl after my own heart. She empowers women entrepreneurs to launch aligned and sustainable businesses. And if you really know what this means, it's your version, your reflection of what you're here to create, not some cookie cutter follow someone else's recipe. Using a foundation and making it work for you with a powerful coach. So she is a business coach, obviously, and a somatic practitioner who promotes an integrated approach to transformation through sound, breath, movement, strategy. She's founded Move and Still, the Nourish Wellness Collective. She hosts the School of Healing podcast. She's got a book called Hold Space to Heal. Oh, melting me. And she has two girls, Yara and Zuri, who, of course, I mean, if you have children, there's just no greater joy than beautiful little humans. So Dominiece, welcome, 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 sister. I'm just honored beyond to be spending the morning with you. Thank you for joining me.
Mia, thank you for having me. Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. I am pretty sure that that is the most beautiful introduction that I've had since I've been a podcast guest. And I was just like, as you were reading that, I was so full of gratitude with how
Mm,
you have seen me. I think sometimes we struggle to see ourselves fully.
yeah.
I can say that that has definitely been something that I've been working to overcome. And hearing you describe me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to be here today. So thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. A pleasure. So where do we begin? Where do you want to
Mm.
start in, this journey? Like you talk about this 4-year period. So is that
Mhm.
significant to you? Was there something that shifted? Did Spirit call 4 years ago,
Mm.
or did an event happen that started
Yeah,
to kind of diverge from what you were doing to what you're doing
we can start there. I think that's a great place to start. So for about 4.5 years ago now, I had been prior to that point, like started on my personal development and self growth journey, but I was still very inconsistent. And that was how I had been with everything, whether it was my health, whether it was, any
now?
sort of professional goal. I was always really inconsistent. And so in 2017 is really when I really got started on my journey. I was meditating one day, and my grandmother actually came to me in a meditation. She was an ancestor at that time. She still is. And I
Okay, good.
always joke that she didn't come back. I always joke that she summons me. She spoke to me beautifully, and we talked about life, and we talked about just some of the experiences that I had had and that she had lived through. And she essentially told me that it was time to get to work, that my soul had come here for a purpose, and it was time to begin to walk in that purpose. And that was in 2017. And so I started, like, taking action from that point, but I was still really struggling with being consistent. And I was still very just unclear about what my path was supposed to be. And then at the end of 2019, December of 2019, I had just had my second daughter in September. So she was only about 2 months old. I was supposed to be gearing up to go back to work in January of 2020, but I was like feeling like I wasn't supposed to. Like I was conflicted with knowing that the time was coming for me to go back, and then feeling like my soul was like, I don't want to do that. And so I
Yeah.
made a decision to quit my full-time job at that time. And this was, after advocating for better benefits and not getting better benefits, after advocating for better pay. Like there was just a ton that led up to that decision.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
originally, when I quit my job in December of 2019, my goal was to just take a slightly extended maternity leave. So I was planning to
Mhm.
maybe be out for 6 months, and then I was going to go back to work. And then
Mhm.
in March of 2020, we know what happened, right? The world
Yeah.
started shifting rapidly,
Yeah.
and it wasn't an ideal time for me to be entering the workspace. And so I was at a space of being unemployed. I had started a brick and mortar business a few months prior, didn't even mention that. And so that got shut down because of COVID. I had a
Mhm.
newborn and a toddler, and then I had
Mhm.
a marriage that was like really on the rocks at that time. And so I was just like, this is a lot. I don't know what to do with any of this. Like as someone who has always tried to control things and like hold it together, I was
Yeah.
falling apart at that point internally, and then things were falling apart outside of my home. So the only thing I knew to do was to be still. I started praying and I started meditating. It was literally like
Mhm.
my moment of surrender, of being like, this is too much for me and I need some
Yeah.
help. And I started praying, really hoping that spirit would just throw me a lifeline. Like I was just looking for some way out. One day, as I was meditating, I got a download, I got a whisper, and I was guided to focus on my mind, body, and spirit every day for 90 days. And I did that. And I can talk a little bit about what that looks like. But every day for 3 months, I nourished myself, I poured into myself. And because I was really inconsistent prior to, that was really hard for me
Yeah.
committing to that every day. And so the first 2 or 3 weeks of that process, I really struggled with being consistent, but I kept doing it. I kept showing up and I kept putting the effort in. And then maybe around the 3 week mark, something started to shift where I started to feel better, and it became easier for me to commit to doing that every day. And so, fast forward to the end of that 90-day period of being very intentional about nourishing myself. And I really feel like I came alive. It was like a spiritual awakening that happened for me. And that was really the start of my transformation. So, physically, I had lost about 15 pounds, which was a big deal for me at that time because I struggled with my weight for most of my life. And I was, a yo yo dieter, always had a hard time with losing weight and gaining weight. And, that was just the history of my relationship with food. And so the weight fell off like very easy. I didn't really have to try
Mhm.
much. And I realized now that a part of what was happening was I was healing a lot of internal wounds and unresolved
Mhm.
trauma, and the physical weight was just an external manifestation of the things that were
Mhm.
happening internally. And so as I was working over this 90-day period of really reconnecting with my soul and allowing myself to heal, the weight started to fall off. So that was a change mentally. I had so much clarity. Like it was just like I had been existing in a fog and I was so unclear about who I was. And after that 90-day period, I was just a lot clearer. I started to notice limiting beliefs and self-doubt and like all the thoughts that had been holding me back. And I just had a greater awareness. And so mindset work was a really important part of that process. And then spiritually, I was just much clearer about my purpose and who I was. And so I continued that practice after that 90 days. And that
Yeah.
was really my introduction into entrepreneurship because I felt like I was alive and I wanted everyone I knew to feel that way. And so I
Mhm.
shared it with my friends and family, and,
Mhm.
y'all join me on this challenge. And it was like a
Mhm.
free thing that I was doing at the
Mhm.
time. But that was how I got started in coaching. I really, again, just like wanted every single person in the world to feel what I was feeling and to have those same sort of effects that I was having.
Mhm.
And today, fast forward, 4.5 years later, I'm still doing that practice. It has really become a part of my lifestyle and who I am, and it has completely transformed me. And when I started at the top of this year to be guided back into coaching, stepped away, quit coaching at the end of 21. I didn't
Mhm.
want to, I will be honest, because I was burned out when I was doing it before. It didn't feel like it was in alignment before, and it was really hard. And so when spirit was guiding me back to it, I was like, so I had to really sit and
Yeah.
like pray over that and accept
Yeah.
that and like move through all of the
Are you
resistance.
sure? Like,
Yeah, really, like I've done that already. Like, can we maybe find someone else for that? Finally, right, I decided to be obedient to that calling. And when I started thinking about my coaching program and what I wanted to offer to the world and how I really wanted to serve, I knew that the 4% formula, which is what I've deemed this process, I knew that I wanted that mind, body, spirit process to be the foundation of that. And so I started really thinking about, well, how do I share this out, like this daily practice with people in a way that is, relatable,
Mhm.
attainable, like something that's easy and practical for people to do with busy lives. And so I started thinking about how long I was taking to do it and like, how I kind of divvied that up. And I was like, okay, well, typically it's about 15 minutes of mindset. It's about 15 minutes of a spiritual practice, and it's at least 30 minutes of physical movement. Add
Mhm.
it all up, that's 1 hour. And I was like, okay,
Mhm.
so 1 hour, like how much is 1 hour out of a 24-hour day? And
Mhm.
it's 4%. And I was like, oh,
4%.
surely I
Yeah,
can convince
huge.
people to give
Yeah.
themselves 4% of their day.
Yeah.
And so that was the birth of the 4% formula. I'm happy to dive deeper about like what that looks like in the more of the practical things, but that was really how I've gotten to this space. And I continue to do this practice for myself. It's now weaved into the foundation of my business
Mhm.
coaching program because I believe so strongly in the
Yeah.
transformative impacts of this
Yeah.
process. And so I would say that that is the journey that has gotten me to where I am today.
So to unpack and go into this a little bit,
Mm,
because there's the theme here listeners will catch in all these fabulous, incredible women's stories. Something is happening to you,
mm,
and it's happening to you in order to become of service to
mm,
others.
mm,
So lean in. You're not looking for something out there ahead of you.
mm,
You're looking for what's happening inside or has happened and
mm,
how you've dealt with it or not
mm,
dealt with it, and hence the breadcrumbs towards the solution and the answers that you're seeking.
mm,
So we don't need to be thinking in this conditional or external circumstance way. We need to be doing that deep spirit work that Dominiece has
mm,
talked about now, of looking into your heart and looking
mm,
into your inner wisdom and your inner spirit to connect, to receive that clarity.
yeah.
And I really want to pull that out because we tend to be chasing and seeking externally. And
Mm,
then that, because one of my questions for you a bit later that landed was, why do you think some people so-called do and some people don't?
mm,
We can all get there in our own time, but you have to start going inward. And so what you
yeah.
described to me very much is being in a
Yeah.
state of being before moving towards the doing. You
Mm,
create and grow yourself and your capacity and your clarity,
mm,
because that's a big part of what you're saying. In one of your emails, I think it said, how do people know? How can they see my transformation? I have a very clear life purpose now.
mm,
You already illustrated that with kind of the fog and the uncertainty, and
mm,
everything was closing in and not
mm,
really spacious, creative, fulfilling, right?
mm,
That clarity, that's a state of being, that's a
mm,
state of allowing the stillness from spending an hour. And let's go there. Do we have to
mm.
do it all at the same time,
Nope.
right?
Yeah.
Is there a
So,
police that's going to come? Hey, you didn't do your 4% in linear fashion,
yeah.
right?
So that's important to note, right? Like you don't have to do all of these things at one time. I was actually sharing this on a podcast one day with another woman, and she was like, so I said, break it up, right? Like make it make sense for your lifestyle. This is not
Yes.
meant to be back to back, one consecutive hour. I break it up in my day. And she goes,
Mhm.
I actually love the idea of breaking it up because it gives you time to come back to yourself multiple times in the day. And I was like, oh,
There
I
you
never
go.
thought about it
That's
that
right.
way.
Yeah.
And so, like, let's just say you start your day with 15 minutes of spiritual work, and that can look like, however you connect to your spirit,
Hmm.
however you
Hmm.
connect to your higher power, however you connect to your soul. That's what I really mean when I say spiritual work. And so that looks different for each of us because I believe that God meets us in different spaces and places. And so sometimes for me that's prayer and meditation on my cushion, sometimes that's getting out
Hmm.
in nature and just allowing myself to be still, sometimes it's
Hmm.
just sitting and not doing and just allowing myself to be. But it's 15 minutes of whatever that looks like for you. It can be free form journaling, again, it just can be taking a long warm bath, like however you feel
Hmm.
connected. I have a male friend and we were talking about this and he was like, I don't really know how I connect with God. And I was like, where do you get your best ideas and the most clarity? And he was like, oh, when I'm riding my bike. He's a cyclist. And I was like, well, that's it. That's your
Hmm.
spiritual practice. And so I think just reframing the way we think about this spiritual practice and knowing that
Yeah.
it can be any way, like God will meet you where
Yeah.
you are, is important. But you do that for 15 minutes. It's nice to start your day that way with some sort of morning routine, but it doesn't have to be. 15 minutes of mindset is just listening to inspirational or instructional content. And so anything that inspires you or something that you can learn from. So
Hmm.
listening to podcasts such as this, maybe going on YouTube, listening to a nice audible book or reading a book if you have time. You can do that while you're taking a shower. You can do that while you're loading the dishwasher on your drive to work or, dropping off, picking up the kids. So you can
Hmm.
get very creative about what that 15 minutes looks like for you. And then the movement piece is just really any sort of physical activity that resonates
Hmm.
with you. Doesn't have to be going to the gym and working out
Hmm.
and like, string training. If that's your thing, then great. But if it's not, it can be yoga, it can be Zumba. Sometimes I just put on music and dance with my kids in in our living
Hmm.
room. And so the idea here is to make this process work for your life. And it doesn't
That's
have
right.
to all be done consecutively. If you do break it up, the beautiful thing is that throughout the day, this becomes more of a grounding practice, an anchor where you continually bring yourself back to center. And so I like to
Hmm.
think about it that way also. Like if I break this up, it gives me an opportunity multiple times in the day to
Hmm.
prioritize myself, to come home to myself. And so it's an opportunity though to, like you said, be with yourself to really get that clarity and that purpose. And I will be honest, like when I started this practice, I just thought it was going to be for 90 days. And I started to
Right.
feel so good that at the end I was like, oh,
Yeah.
there's no way I can, stop this process. And so even if you're strapped for time and you don't feel like you can start with an hour, even if you cut this entire process in half and just commit it to 30 minutes a day, 7 minutes on mind and spirit, 15 minutes of movement, what happens is you start to feel better. You start to feel more clarity and, have a greater sense of who you are. And you're going to want to continue this process until, so however you get started, just the big thing is to start and, you'll build
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't, and even, you said it took 2 to 3 weeks to kind of get
Mm-hmm.
into a momentum
Mm-hmm.
and a
Yeah.
consistency. So the willingness to try,
Mm-hmm.
not to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then to allow yourself to build some desire and for your neural pathways to shift from what you've been
Mm-hmm.
doing. My,
Mm-hmm.
again, ad
Mm-hmm.
nauseum, favorite analogy. Your first workout session is always the hardest because it's new. It's
Yeah.
pushing you. You're moving into the unknown, which is
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable, but it's not harmful.
Yeah.
So give yourself um, curiosity to
Mm-hmm.
play in that and to
Mm-hmm.
try it. And there is no police of the world,
No.
of the spiritual expansion industry that's going to come and say you did 8 minutes instead of
Mm-hmm.
7, or you didn't, you only stood up and went up and down the stairs. Like,
Yeah.
actually, that would be another really easy thing that you could do at
Mm-hmm.
home. Go up and down
Mm-hmm.
the stairs, walk around the house. And that's a really beautiful piece to allow for flexibility in the
Mm.
how.
Yes.
It's not the how, it's not the doing,
Mm-hmm.
it's the being a person who feeds their mind, feeds their
Mm-hmm.
spirit, takes care of their body.
Yeah.
Because what do we have at the end? What's there?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
this. It's, yes, there's legacy, there's meaning, there's connection. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're transitioning from this world, you're going with what's left of your mind, wah wah, what's left
Mm-hmm.
of your body, and your spirit,
Yeah.
right? Those are the
Yeah.
things that we have agency over, that we have complete autonomy over,
Mm-hmm.
which is awesome and kind of awful because it's a lot of personal
Yeah.
responsibility, right?
Yeah.
But there's a very easy way to start. So it's beautiful encouragement,
Mhm.
not to be perfect, but to
Yes.
practice and to just see if it fits for you. I
Yeah.
can't really imagine, and I will overgeneralize, that there's a person out there who will say, no, no, not it. Like air,
Yeah.
water, meditation, movement, and nurturing. They kind of all go together, right?
Mm.
So um, if we can spend an hour doing other things, we
Mm.
can find time. And it is true to pattern interrupt, a beautiful term that just landed with another woman was speaking to, pattern interrupt throughout the day,
Mm.
right? To shift out of the status quo. Like I know for
Mm-hmm.
me,
Oof.
I go to work, I'm all day dealing with that stuff. And then alarms on my phone help me jolt out and
Mm.
kind of like remember
I
the
love that.
rest of my universe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I love that, and I love the emphasis. I'm really happy that you're overstating the importance of this not being about perfectionism, because yes, like you want to be consistent with this process. However, there will be days where you do one of three, right, or two of three. Like there are days where I don't hit mindset today, but I've done something for my spirit and I've done something for my body, and so it still helps me to feel whole. And so, yes, this is not about perfectionism. Like, if you don't do all three, it's totally fine. It is about building a consistent practice of really nourishing yourself. And what
Mhm.
you will find, and what I have found that has been so beautiful, is I deem this the 4% formula for consistency, because I was someone who was so inconsistent, and
Yeah.
that inconsistency showed up in all the parts of my life. So I was inconsistent in my marriage, I was inconsistent
Mhm.
as a mom, I was inconsistent as an entrepreneur, and then I started doing this daily practice for myself. Like this was
Yeah.
just a personal care practice. But what I found was that when I was able to do this consistently, that translated into other parts of my life. And so now I'm able to
Mhm.
show up better as an entrepreneur. I'm able to keep my word much better as a mom because I've built this practice. And so how we do one thing is typically how we do all things. And
Right.
so that's another thing too. Like there are all of these really beautiful, personal benefits that we've talked about. But once you build this skill of keeping your word to yourself in this one place, that translates to other parts of your life. And that's a really beautiful byproduct of doing this, right? Like you
Yeah.
learn how to be someone who says the thing and keeps your word to yourself, because that's really
That's
what this is all about. And so I just want to stress, it's not about getting it right every single day. It's about learning to do something, keeping your word to yourself, and then seeing how that translates into other areas of your life.
And as you were describing it, I was realizing and relaxing too that I'm already doing a lot of that now. I
Yeah.
have a habits program, shocking,
Yeah.
and so a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
But we're already doing a lot of this stuff
Mm-hmm.
doing. So it doesn't, necessarily even become another task on the
Mm-hmm.
list. This is um, mixed in to your
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle already.
Yeah.
So folding laundry, like you said,
Yes.
washing dishes, like you said,
Yes.
layering it in,
Yeah.
buttering it on what you're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that a lot of you listeners, even just listening to this podcast, is the
Mm-hmm.
nurturing the
Yep.
mindset piece, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're listening while walking, now you've hit two of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we're not adding to the plate.
Mm-hmm.
We're just learning to fold things in that are complementary to create. I am a woman who takes care of
Mm-hmm.
her mind, takes care of her
Mm-hmm.
spirit, cherishes and takes care of this vessel, right? Like my grandma lived to 99. She took care of her body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's how we get there. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, let go if you're feeling pressure or tense or judgment of self for the inconsistency that
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at. Scarcity mindset, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And come back and just go, oh, it is possible. I'm probably already doing some of this. I may
Mm-hmm.
not just be as intentional,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you can slow down and ease into it.
Yeah.
So it's so So it's not hard. That's the thing. These journeys, this self-expansion, it's not really hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
that we're just kind of in a state of being that
Mm-hmm.
needs a little sprinkling and a little massaging to
Mm-hmm.
loosen in order to allow for more to come.
Love that.
So, like, I'll use the analogy of like a container, and you can fill it so much until it can't hold anymore,
Mm-hmm.
unless take the lid off and then it can overflow. So
Mm.
here's our
Oh,
analogy for what we
yeah,
want to do with our spirit, right?
that's so
And
beautiful.
in order to do that, that's seeing something different. How are we going to fit more in there? Take the lid off. It's a different perspective.
Yeah,
Let things flow
yeah.
and be curious, open, right? If we're
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh no, I'm all set. I'm going to live like this for the next 57 years. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Option for sure. Or what else?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel, Dominiece, this would be a good time now to come into after the 90 days, rolling
Mm-hmm.
out the 4% free program,
Mm-hmm.
momentum surely starting to show
Yeah.
up in different ways and things
Mm-hmm.
coming towards you. So
Yeah.
let's lead off and, or continue from there.
Yeah. I and you actually hinted to this earlier just about the almost like a coming home to self and no longer needing that external validation or those external
Mhm,
answers.
mhm,
I think that that has been one of the greatest benefits of this daily practice is because I was someone who was always looking externally for someone to tell me what to do, right? Like, coach,
mhm.
tell me what to do,
Yep.
mentor, tell me what to do. And of course, like, I still believe in the value of having people who have figured out the thing in business to help me figure out the thing. However,
Mhm,
there is a greater sense of self, which allows people to be guides for me, but I know what I need to
mhm,
do. And that is something that's different for me. Like, if you had asked me 5, 6, 7 years ago, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Or what is your purpose? I really had a hard time with those questions. And I would get frustrated when my ex husband used to ask me those kind of questions because it was like, I don't know.
mhm,
Why are you asking me that? Right. I
mhm,
don't have those answers. But what this practice has done is that it has allowed me to really realign. And I say remember because I think that we all know, right? And then we forget, and life is about
yeah.
like going through that
Yes.
process of
Yes.
remembering. I believe that we come here and our soul has chosen this impact and this mission that it wants to live out, and you go through the process of remembering as you heal. And so that's what this process has allowed for me to do. It has allowed for me to become more clear and to remember the thing that I said yes to right before I came into this human body. And so
Mhm,
that is what, after that 90 days, I wasn't planning on starting out as a coach. It was just like, I want to share
mhm,
this out. And really the journey has unfolded. There's been a lot of pivots and turns in, this last four
mhm,
and a half years, but it has been constantly coming back to myself, asking myself the questions, and then figuring out, what are the steps that I need to take to execute and to live out this purpose. And honestly, like I said, when I got the guidance to step back into coaching at the top of this year, I didn't really want to, but I sat with myself and I allowed myself to say, like, is this in alignment with my higher purpose? And I
yeah.
genuinely feel that the work that I'm doing is showing up and allowing me to serve from a place of purpose. And that is why I said yes to and decided to be obedient to that nudge. And as a business coach, I think that just my approach to business is very different because
Mhm,
I really believe that, as entrepreneurs, like you talked earlier about alignment and sustainability. That alignment piece is so important for me because it's what are you supposed to be doing, right? Like
yes.
I can guide you and give you some business strategies and things, but it is about making sure that you are in alignment with your highest self and with God, and that is the way that you are going out and serving in the world. And so I think that's just so important to stress is that, you know what I mean? Like this process that we are talking about today is really a process of you becoming so clear about who you are and what your purpose is. And then from there, you can figure out what steps you need to take and who can be helpful in that process. But you have to know what it looks like and, what the assignment is first in order to walk
Mhm,
in that path and purpose. And so, if anyone is listening who can relate to not being sure and maybe, seeking answers externally, that's a normal part of the process. I know that I used to be that person, but I can truly say now that the sense of clarity I have about who I am has been because I make time every single day to cultivate that relationship with myself. And if you think about it, we focus a lot on our external relationships. So our partners, our children, our friends, our colleagues, we put a lot of time, effort, and energy into making sure that those relationships are okay. But
Mhm.
how often do you assess the relationship with self, and how often do you spend time really cultivating that relationship? And this practice is really a daily invitation to cultivate the relationship with self. And when you do that, right, like naturally, anything that you put time, effort, and energy into, it's going to improve, whether that's an external relationship or the relationship with self. And so I think that's important to note, right? Like the purpose piece and becoming in alignment, whatever that looks like for you, is such a really beautiful part of the process of coming home to self. And that's what I really see this as.
You've just described like this living in a higher state of awareness that isn't
Mm,
concerned with materialism or status or
mm,
anything. It's a very pure way of allowing your heart to create meaning, connection,
mm,
impact in the world. And you can't put a price on that. And then you don't get to, or you don't have to then worry about the returns because you're
mm,
living in this, pure purpose
yeah.
frequency, right?
Mm-hmm,
And that's a theme that I see in a lot of very beautiful women who have found fulfillment
mm,
is again that coming from a place of being a woman who
yeah.
not sells a social media marketing strategy,
Mm,
not completely transforms your closet from chaos to calm, not, because what's behind that offer is the desire of the heart to provide something in order for that heart to feel fulfilled.
yeah.
And
Mm,
that is authentic living. And
yeah.
that, like you said, bleeds into everything else.
Yeah.
So then you're not a version of yourself at work that's different from the version with your kids,
Mm,
that's different from the version with your husband. You are the version who loves to clean out the closet with
mm,
everybody,
mm,
everywhere, all the time,
mm,
which means your heart frequency can be expressed in all moments. That is freedom. And
mm,
now I'm, kind of wondering and reflecting that when we talk about entrepreneurism bringing freedom, it's not even, let's go beyond, it's not even time, money, flexibility, it's fulfillment. It's
mm, mm,
expressed heart, expressed
yeah.
spirit,
Yeah.
flowing. I have goosebumps, guys, flowing out in the world, and then open to receiving whatever's to come as a result of that. So, like, there's
Mm,
an element for sure in the 2D or 3D. I always get them mixed up, but then, like, living in the 5D is above, and then you just get to
mm,
watch what unfolds below.
mm,
And
mm,
so with that, it's like you can just kind of break open. You can just have so
yeah.
much more opportunity and curiosity to see and to figure it out. And then choose something and run with it.
Mm,
And it will come so easily
mm,
when it is in its purest form. So
yeah.
for me, like I, was an online business manager and I love organizing. I've got an annoyingly amazing gift of administration, good at organizing chaos, but it was still a little bit draining. I've allowed myself then to go deeper and see it's just a heart of service. I just have a
Mm,
deep heart of service of softening people, I think is the easiest way to
mm,
describe it.
mm,
And now I feel so free to bring that everywhere. And I
mm,
do.
mm,
And
mm,
like I'm not concerned with the returns on it. And I was saying to
yeah.
Dominiece before we recorded, I work full time. I'm growing an online business. Whatever happens is okay. I'm happy
Mm,
with it because I get to
mm,
do what my heart wants to do. I
yeah.
don't need an external circumstance to validate it. I get to
Mm,
direct the external circumstance.
I love that. I love that so much. I I appreciate this conversation today because I think one of the themes or a theme that's resonating on my heart right now, there's two words that are coming up. There's this level of authenticity with this process and just, what we're talking about. And I think that alignment is so important. I think that when you talk about fulfillment, right? Like I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, it's hard to quantify what you offer, right? It's like, well,
Hmm.
at the end of this XYZ program,
Yes.
you'll have a business plan, a viable business model, and all of these things. But it's like, it's those untangible things, I think,
Yes.
sometimes that really make the difference, right? It's me saying, just trust me that if you do this process and move through this 4% formula and then do these business things, like at the end you'll find a greater level of fulfillment. And that is really something to me that like you can't put a price on, because
Hmm.
when you ask me about at the start of my journey, most of my life, like I didn't go all the way back to my childhood. I didn't talk about the
Hmm.
unresolved trauma, but most of my life was
Hmm.
feeling unfulfilled. Most of my life was feeling very unworthy. Most of my life I wasn't showing up as my authentic self. I would put a mask on and like go out into the world as this version of myself that I thought I had to be.
Yeah.
And then when the curtains came down, it was so many limiting beliefs and so much self-doubt and just so much fear around being seen by the world.
Hmm.
And that like healing and going through this process over this last 4.5 years has really like allowed me to find my way back to a space of wholeness, right? And it has allowed me to do work that is fulfilling every day, whereas most of my career was waking up every day and dreading getting out of bed, right? Dreading
Hmm.
doing the thing and going to work and just feeling so unhappy. And it's like this daily practice of cultivating the relationship with myself has allowed for me to build businesses that are authentic to who I am and in alignment to who I am. And so the financial gain is just a byproduct of being able to show up every day and be able to serve the world in ways that feel so good to me,
Yes.
and the level of fulfillment that it offers to hold space for people to heal, to
Hmm.
be a light and illuminate the path for other women, or to be able to
Yeah.
support businesses and organizations with mindfulness and stress management practices. Like the level of fulfillment that I get from that, it's like the financial piece is great. Of course we have to survive in the world, and so we need that. But I think that it's important, like I said, for those pieces that we can't often quantify that are
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
important, that fulfillment and just waking up and feeling good about the work. Like that is what happens when you are showing up from a space of service and heart-centered entrepreneurship, which
Yeah.
I know that we are both really focused on, offering to the world.
Yeah. Yes. And helping people get there too.
Mm-hmm.
Helping other people
Yes.
get there too,
Yeah.
like you said at the
Yeah.
beginning, right? I feel so good. I want other people to
Mm-hmm.
feel this way.
Yeah.
Same,
Mm-hmm.
same.
Mm-hmm.
Like to wake up and be excited for the day, whatever the day brings.
Mm-hmm.
My heart is weary right now, literally, 5 times. My heart is weary right now. I'm feeling the weight of the reality of this
Mm.
chapter of life,
Yeah.
but I've been building my spiritual
Yeah.
power and I can hold. I can hold. So I can
Mm-hmm.
tighten and constrict from what I'm going through. And
Mm-hmm.
I can do that in order to release, to let the body express. And then I can like relax and open back up and say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
one step at a time.
Yes.
And these are the things that are still going well amongst,
Mm-hmm.
the, I don't know, the lifiness of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is a beautiful and wonderful way to live
Yeah.
and allows you to um, create things beyond your wildest dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So as we kind of move towards closing, I don't want this to ever end. But I'd love to give you some time to talk about motherhood
Yes, I know. I was
and
like,
transitioning from
mm,
career into entrepreneurship and
yeah.
building with a toddler and a 2-month old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love for you to share too about creating the transformation university.
Mm-hmm.
So another Dominiece again, beautiful reflection, because I like the wordplay, powerful. And so she's done YOUniversity in her program too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, gosh, motherhood. Oh, I'm like, where do I even start there? I feel so when I think about the things that I'm proud of in my life right now, I feel really proud to have made the decision to take a very like non-traditional path. Like even, it's become more popular, but entrepreneurship takes so much courage. And when you are, saying yes to this thing that you're feeling called to do, like there's a lot that comes with that yes. And I am in a space where I'm doing it full time, and I'm doing it just by myself. Like I separated from my
Mhm.
ex-husband about 2.5 years ago. And so there have been a lot of pivots. I actually went back to work full time for a bit just because
Yeah,
my mental health was in a space where I wasn't able to serve, and I recognize that.
yeah, beautiful.
But I'm so proud of myself that I have said yes to this calling with
Mhm.
children, right? Because
Yes,
it's not easy. It's not
yes.
easy saying yes to this thing that's so sometimes unpredictable and up and down, and there's all these emotions, and being a mom and having to, be a
Mhm.
mother in the midst of. And yet I'm really proud of myself and grateful that I get to live my life in this way, and I get to make my schedule one where I get to show up for my children in this way. Motherhood for me is my why. When you ask me why I am doing this work, it is really, of course, to be of service to other people. But when I think about like why I started on this path, it was because I wanted to explore this calling that was on my heart. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could do this thing that there was so much fear and self-doubt about. And so every day I
Mhm.
wake up and it's really me versus me. It's me
Mhm.
proving to
Mhm.
myself and that part of
Mhm.
myself that I can do this. And my goal is to show my two daughters, they are 5 and almost 8, that you can live a limitless life, right? That
Yeah,
regardless of your gender or your race or all the boxes that we get boxed into in our lives and all the stories, and the beliefs that we are told, because that has been a part of my journey, is unlearning that
yes.
I had these limitations. My choice to wake up every day and to do this is to show my children that, life can be limitless. It can be beautiful. You can chart out your path. You can work alongside spirit, and you get to make this what you want it to be. And so I can't talk about entrepreneurship without talking about motherhood, because they really are my
Mhm.
why. And on the days where it's
Mhm.
hard and I'm crying and questioning if I can do this, like they are the reason why I continue to do this every single day. Because when I look back 10, 15, 20 years from now and I've done it, right?
Mhm.
I know that I woke up every day and I continue to say yes to the journey because I wanted to prove to my children that it was possible. For anyone who's listening to this that is a mom, right? And who's trying to figure out how you balance all of these things, the beautiful thing about it is that I think community is such an important part of this process. Being in community with I have had the opportunity, and that is what I'm working to create, a container where women can come together who are balancing motherhood and full-time jobs and trying to figure out
Mhm.
what that transition looks like. But coming together in community, I think, is such an important part of this. I am in a group with a small, very small group, but there's other women entrepreneurs that are moms also, and we
Mhm.
uplift and we pour into and we empower one
Mhm.
another. And on the days where we feel like we can't do it, them saying, hey girl, yeah, you can still do it, take a moment, but you can still
Mhm.
do it. It's so important. And so for anyone who's listening to this, who's thinking like, how do I do this? I think that there are a few things. Like, you have to have a very strong why. It can't just be because you want to generate additional income. It has to
Mhm.
be something deeper than that. So you need to be very clear on your why. Identifying your tribe and your support system becomes really important. And so whether that's family or friends, like there will be times where you need people. And so who are those people that
Mhm.
can support you on the
Mhm.
journey? And then again, I think that community is such an important piece, whether that's one person that can hold you accountable, or a small group, or joining a program where you can find accountability. Having accountability and community is so important, because it's
Mhm.
not an if, it's a when you don't want to do it, when you don't want to show up for yourself, when you don't want to show up for your business, when you don't want to show up for your goals. That community, that accountability is going to be what keeps you going, right? In the midst
Yes.
of. And so I would say that those are like the most important pieces: the why, the support, the community, because we aren't meant to do these things alone. And I think sometimes where we get tripped up is when we try to do things
Yeah.
alone, whether it's investing in a coach or a mentor to provide guidance and to illuminate the path, or even again just having folks that can pour into you and lift you up when you're feeling like you don't have anything else. When we try to go at the journey alone, and I speak from a space of experience, my
Hmm.
first round of coaching and working in the online space, I was by myself. I was by myself and it was extremely hard and I quit. I quit.
Right.
And when I came
Yeah.
back, like when I stepped away and I started doing my business different, one of the things that I realized was, Dom, you need community. Like you need people who are on a similar journey to you. And so that is what I would have to offer is that it is possible, right? There are women that are doing it, but you
Hmm.
cannot do it by yourself. Time management is another, like when you think about like the practical things, especially
Yeah.
when you're working full time, I'm sure that you can account to that. And I know what it was like just a few months ago when I was working full time and balancing a business. And so being really uh, intentional with your time becomes important. And so, like, starting your day with even if it's 15 minutes of pouring into yourself and then jumping into your 9 to 5 and then thinking about what that evening looks like for you. And the last thing I'll say here, and I love your message, Mia, is you get to make this journey what you want it to be. It doesn't have to look
Hmm.
like anyone else's. And so, like, social media and the online world can make us all think that we have to be working towards the same thing, but figure out what
Yes.
works for your life and what is sustainable for
Yes.
the season that you're in, and then go from there. And so, if right now, right, having a full-time job and just having a side hustle is your path, that's okay, right? It doesn't have to be that you're working and putting this pressure on yourself for this to be a full-time thing. I think that's an important thing to note too. It's great when we can replace our income, but also if that's not your story right now or even your heart's desire right now, like that is okay too. I know that was a lot. I
No,
don't know if I
so
answered the
perfect.
question
Of course.
specifically, but those are the
Of
things that are
course.
coming up on my heart right now to share out. Like you have to forge your own path, and then you have to have people in your corner as you are forging your own path.
Yeah, it's like motherhood for me has been an incredibly transformative
Mm,
experience
mm, mm.
because she reflects back what she's seeing. So
Yes.
she holds me super duper
Oof.
accountable, and she is
Yeah.
like a little police officer in the house. It's like enforcing rules all over the place.
Mm,
And it's been so fun and playful, and so it's
mm,
kept me grounded
mhm.
and open, which is
Yeah.
such a great way to feel throughout the day. And the other piece that I love is, you're talking about the self being in the
Mm,
community to receive, but the
mhm.
self being in the community also gives you a space to give
Yeah.
and to like, oh my God, me too, or I have that same question, or
Mhm.
that just happened to me, or we can all cry together. We
Yeah.
can all just fall apart together and be held in that.
Mm,
And so
mhm.
that beautiful circle of women around you who are
Mhm.
going through the same thing as you kind of
Yeah.
shake you out of your tunnel vision a little bit,
Mhm.
and broaden your perspective and stretch your heart because
Mm,
we're all going through these things. You guys just heard Dom. She's full time in her business, raising two kids as a single mom, and
mm,
still going through the so called roller coaster of entrepreneurship, which
mm,
I've got a whole rant about roller coasters and entrepreneur. Anyway, come back to that. But when you give, you receive. When you
mhm.
ask,
Mm,
you also like can give back, right? And it
mhm.
just normalizes and broadens perspective.
Mm,
Because definitely when we're solopreneuring, which is like the thing that I dislike the most in the world, right? Forget solopreneur, we collaborapreneur from now on. And that either
yeah.
means we're building together or we're building with each other, we're supporting,
Yeah.
we're coming together to do
Yeah.
this. We're women, we're community minded,
Mm,
we link arms all the time. It's our
mhm.
nature, it's our inherent nature to nurture
Mm,
one another.
yeah.
And that that is a very priceless value of
Mm,
putting yourself in a group. It's not, okay, I'm going to do this, so I need to go in a group and I need to be accountable. No, you just need to be with other people like you because you're not really otherwise,
mhm.
particularly in the online world,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And yes, that example, like when we show up for our kids like that, we're not only doing it for them, and this we're doing it to transform
Mm,
like our entire lineage's history
yeah.
into
Oof.
something else.
Mm,
We're chain
mm,
breakers right now in the world. These
mm,
women who are out here pursuing this, it's so much bigger than us. And I can see it with like um, non comprehending understanding that we are changing the history of
mm,
what's happened before us to
mm,
create a very literal better future,
mm,
a better future for our kids, but for how the world has been living,
mm, yeah.
right? A
Mm.
coming together, guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So no pressure.
So,
But let's go get them, shall we?
yeah, you I love talking to you. I can't wait to have another conversation. I hope you will join me on my podcast. This has been so
Done.
beautiful. You asked me about Transformation University,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
everything that you said was like, wow, so beautiful. I created this 90-day coaching program, and my hope is really to guide women first to reconnect with themselves, because I think that that is such an important part of the process. And so during this process, we start with the 4% formula, which we talked about. We go through a process of self-discovery, because I think that, again, like, knowing who you are is such an important part of how you show up and how you serve. And I can speak from the end of not knowing who I was and just doing the thing that felt like the easiest point of entry,
Yes.
and I can talk about how every day was hard and I felt like I was swimming upstream. And it wasn't until I gave myself time to go through a process of self discovery that I realized all these beautiful gifts and skills that I had been sitting on and just underestimating, that I'm like, oh, these are
Mhm.
unique. Like, these are things that I can take and utilize. And so we start with, reconnecting with ourselves, remembering our gifts, skills, and talents, going through that process of self discovery. And then we get into the business practices, right? So you
Mhm.
do all of the understanding your ideal client and market validation, and
Mhm.
creating your signature offer. But I preface that by saying that I have been through so many business coaching programs. I've invested a ton in mentorship, and most of the programs are very masculine, right? They're very
Mhm.
masculine driven, even if they are not males teaching them.
Yes.
And the problem with that is that you get a ton of business strategies, but no one addresses the mindsets and the fears that come with starting a business, or what it looks like to have a business as a woman and a mother, and how you balance all the things. And
Yeah.
so what I've tried to do is create a program that is for women, right? Transformation University is for women, but it's a softened approach. It's a more feminine
Mhm.
approach, where you are able to connect with yourself and then again take those gifts and skills and pour into the world, recognizing that we don't have to do business the way that we've been traditionally taught to do business. Like, there is, I feel like, this wave that's happening where people are awakening to more balance in business, right? And so figuring out what it looks like for you as an entrepreneur, like what strategies feel aligned to you. I'm not a big social media girl, and all of the
Mhm.
strategies that I was taught in the beginning were social media, and it
Yeah.
drained me energetically. And so it's,
Yeah.
again, it's not a one size fits all approach. It's thinking about what works for you in your lifestyle and how you can build a business around that. And so that has really been and continues to be my intention with Transformation University. And the last thing I'll say is just that community piece is so important, right?
Mhm.
That accountability, that's what's going to keep you showing up every single day when this is hard and you're trying to figure out, how do I balance this with kids and my job and all the things. That accountability and that community are an important piece. And so that's a little bit about Transformation University. I'm
Yeah.
really honored, I would say, to have said yes to the calling and to be in a space where I get to guide other women through the process of reconnecting with themselves and then creating something really beautiful to share out with the world.
It is a very holistic how and a
Mm-hmm.
very holistic journey that combines all the elements of what we're seeking. And I
Yeah.
really want to highlight that because it is
Thank you.
different
Mm-hmm.
from other programs that will focus on one piece,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You are using all of the ingredients that really create the full outcome. And so kudos to you for that
Thank
because
you.
that is the sustainable work. That is where you
Yeah.
really become that woman,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So where can we follow you? Where do we
Yeah.
sign up for Transformation University?
So my website is domrclifton.com, And that is a space to connect with me. I send out a daily newsletter, and the newsletter is really just an extension of all the things we've talked about today. I talk
Yeah.
about the business strategies. I talk about, what it looks like to find balance with trying to balance all the things. I am a somatic practitioner, and so we didn't even scrape the surface
Yeah.
of
Oh
my
my God, the
background with
body.
yoga, meditation, breath work, but I share all of these somatic practices out in my newsletter. And so my website, Dom R. Clifton, is a space to start there. And then if you're interested in learning more about how you can get started with the 4% formula, I have actually a free 30-day challenge where you can, embark on this journey for 30 days. And if it feels good after that, feel free to continue, but I guide you through that process. And so, to learn more about this process and to challenge yourself for 30 days with the 4% formula, you can go to 4percentformula.com. The number four is spelled out FOUR, percentformula.com, and take advantage of that free download. And it walks you through what it looks like to get started with this over the next 30 days.
Perfect. Yeah, I highly encourage you to go because we deeply saw into Dom's
Mm-hmm.
heart, and her emails reflect this too. She's got a
Mm-hmm.
gift for writing in
Thank
that
you.
space. And so when you read her emails, I immediately start to remember and soften
Mm-hmm.
again from like the body's, reaction to everything. So just get in there, guys, and reach out if you have questions. All the links will be shared in all the places. And I just deeply thank you for this gorgeous conversation and this
Mm-hmm.
service. And I look forward to staying connected with you.
Thank you for having me. What a beautiful way to start my day. I feel so honored.